But, you know, if you needed to and it was a packed room and you need to make sure everybody had an appropriate time to speak, you could, I think, Amy, one time this year you did put a 3-minute time limit on people because it was a very packed room. And it was getting late, so if you had to do it, you could set off, you saw the room and said, okay, listen, we're gonna do a round robin one time, and then if we do a second time, I'm gonna set, but that's up to the chair. You know, a matter of reading the room and whatever. It has no bearing on me, I'm just thinking on how other towns run their public comment, and some always do the same amount of time, some do allow you to get up and do it more than once, some will interact and back and forth, some will not. So, you know, it's all different and unique, but all things to consider, and I think it's all unique to exactly, you know, how many people are gonna speak. So, again, the onus is on the chair, the way you leave it.
It's all.
Dan, if I may jump in, with the public here, would you guys like to chime in on this?
You killed my joke, I was gonna move on. I was gonna say, I don't think we have anything else to discuss here, so let's move on. You stepped on my joke, you stepped on my punchline. I'm kidding, of course. Public comments?
Cassandra Roth, Patterson Calling. And I love that this is happening. I'm so happy this is happening. And we'll say to Bill's point, I would love to know when it ends.
Yep.
Right? We want to get it perfect, but want something where it's, you guys are all great now. What happens next year? You know, if everybody's not on the same page. So to make sure that it definitely happens before the end of this year.
Of course.
Well before that, I think.
Well
but
before.
if there was a way to maybe do a minimum, like, you know, obviously because you have packed rooms, then you have sometimes where it's just like kind of sad, right? But if you have it that way where it's the chairperson has to give a minimum of X amount of time per person, you figure out whatever math that is for occupancy or what have you, if that's a way to maybe do it. Where you're not limiting, but you're at least granting
Like a ratio.
the person X amount of minutes at a minimum, but then that's up to the discretion of the chair given, you know, reading the room, whether there's 2 people or in the hallway like we've seen sometimes before. And then with the special full, I mean, I think, again, huge, because there are certain things, and those are usually the kind of, they're so urgent, they need a special meeting.
Yep.
So I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's a lot of words to get to just before something that hasn't been fully fleshed out or talked about in the public. I think that's great, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other member of the public?
My understanding is I have 40 minutes.
Yeah, 40 minutes, yes.
I would say, Chairman, what's the limit?
I gave it away.
Grant.
40 minutes, I said it, I'm locked in.
Still Brett Yaris, and I still reside in Cromwell Hamlet from the last meeting. But I echo what Cassandra just said. I think a minimum time limit is great, and then again, discretion beyond that. But most importantly, I'm just really thrilled to see that we've moved beyond the issue of whether or not this should be codified. Back in February, that was a point of contention, that was a point of a lot of discussion and conversation. And I'm glad that we've seen that there is a need for that codification, because the codification is the protection of the public, right? That is where we get our abilities and our rights and our protection from. It has to be codified, right? And again, it draws back to the Bill of Rights. That's why we have the Constitution, because the Bill of Rights were codified. That was the great compromise. So I appreciate all your efforts. The other thing I would just say is, as you all know and are probably tired of me by now, I've been coming to a lot of these meetings since February. I would say that the way you have conducted yourselves tonight is very appreciated as a member of the public. I know it's been tense at times. I know it's been combative at times, and I'm sure you all have your reasons for that. But tonight, it's been really great to see what it's like when you guys really work together and get on the same page, have your disagreements, but find a way to figure it out. And I really appreciate that as just a resident and a member of the public. And again, you know, codification. So as long as we get to a point where something is actually codified, and I would echo Cassandra's point, is that I don't want to see this push through to next year. You guys are here now. You have your positions as they stand. And I think you're all ready to kind of make that next step. So if we just have a few language issues, adding in the special full, that was going to be a question of mine, and I appreciate that getting answered. The other thing I would ask is about other business. Legislator Birmingham, you mentioned that Other business sometimes comes the day of. That would be, I think to Legislator Elner's point, the office of the legislature to make the public aware. When that other business comes in, will it be listed on the agenda for a full or special full of what the other business is so that the public has the ability to come prepared with their thoughts on it?
Well, to the extent it's within 5 or outside of 5 days of the meeting, if there's other business, it'll be on the agenda if a legislator has requested other business be on the agenda. I believe that's the rule.
If it's pre-filed.
Or pre-filed. If there is, so as a practical matter, yes, that will be on the agenda that's published 5 days before on our website. To the extent there might be other business that comes in between the 5-day and the actual meeting date, I think the new Rule C, and we have copies of this, it's on the website. I think the new Rule C would cover that, and so with some amendments, to the extent possible, the agenda for such meetings shall be updated. So again, it gives the flexibility, the spirit is there, that hey, as soon as we get something that is definitely going to be on the agenda, even though it's between 5 days of the meeting, if we get something, we have what's called a message of necessity from our county executive. If he has something that needs immediate attention, we might get that, and I've seen it come in years past, the day of. And back then, we didn't really have a robust website like we do now. But I think in today's day and age, we'd be able to get that at least on the website. And maybe the chair of whether it's a committee or the full meeting might want to make a mention at the beginning of the meeting. Hey, there's something that's on the website. To the extent you guys have your phones open, if you want to see what it is, we just put on a half hour ago. But we got to sometimes, we have to allow for that flexibility of late breaking stuff because, we're movers and shakers here on the county legislature. Yeah, I just want to make sure that's what.
While he's there, one of them.
Well, first, I don't want to interrupt the
I'm
public.
good. No, go ahead, please. Let's let it go.
Actually, Bill had his hand up before me, so.
Did you have a question?
Yes, we do need flexibility because things do pop up, grants and things of that nature. But it seems like recently, we've put things through literally 15 minutes before the meeting, basically to not have enough time to think through the process and make a legitimate decision. And I think that's done on purpose so many times. That's why I suggested that we don't do that moving forward. That some things could be postponed for the next meeting or for a month from now. It doesn't have to be pushed through right away.
Yeah, my thought on that is kind of where I was going with the question, Legislator Goulden, is part of this codification and part of this protection for us as the public, right, is then to not have, again, not you guys, but you guys 30 years from now, who's ever sitting in these seats, right, to not be able to find other loopholes to keep the public out of the process. And that's, you're never going to be able to plug every loophole. There's always going to be, the loopholes available, but that was one of my concerns, but I appreciate that.
Great.
Following up on this, Dan, you mentioned that in order to get something quickly, there has to be a letter of necessity.
Not always. There's some things
Well,
can come
that-
from the legislature. Yeah.
I'm saying, me being one of the younger and newer members of the legislature,
I don't know about younger.
Okay, well, just newer, okay?
Allow the record to show.
Allow the record to show the hair is white, not gray, okay? Now, what I'm saying is that when it is proper and appropriate, a letter of necessity, I think that letter of necessity should accompany the other business when we publish it on the agenda.
That's a pre-filed.
Well, if I could, just from a rules perspective, if the letter of necessity, that only comes from the administration. So yes, I don't disagree but that should be on the agenda as well if it is something that is to inform us and the public why it needs to happen so quickly. That's usually always a letter of necessity, and I think it would probably be put on as part of the item anyway.
That's all
Okay.
I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, my understanding of other business is anybody on the committee can introduce other business at any time, like during that agenda. And as I've often done from the floor, because I'm not on a committee, I would say, I think it would be great if one of the committee members could introduce this tonight. But I wanted to mention something about the February date.
Yes.
We'd probably have to rescind the resolution we passed to adopt the legislative manual from January to December
Mhm.
and pass one that says we adopted from
The next
January to February of the next
Yes,
year.
true.
So we'll probably have to do that, if you want to do that
Yeah.
this year. And I had a long, drawn-out suggestion for what we're struggling with the time limit. If I may, it's not really that long, I'm only
I'm
kidding.
gonna sit right now.
But it, oh, this is your time, I'm kidding. Is this his time?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is, but-
It's 40 minutes are enough.
I yield my time.
Oh, you want 40 minutes?
The gentleman yields.
I yield my time. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seriously, Brett, if you have more.
No. This is, like I said, this is a great way to see business conducted. So again, I appreciate the way you guys have handled yourselves tonight. And it is good to see this, that we're past the issue of whether or not this needs to be codified. Now it's just a matter of how. And again, I appreciate the way you guys are taking that position. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, and gentlemen.
Just to talk about the time
And
limit
the-
wording one more time, and then I can share it with Beth and Conrad and see what we come up with, but maybe it should say something like, the chair shall have the ability to decide and rule that public comment may be restricted by a time limit if in the chair's sole discretion, depending on the size of the public and the complexity of any matters on the agenda, there warrants a shortening of the public comment to speak to enable all members of the public present sufficient time to speak. Something like that, that's a little wordy, but
Oh, no, if you want to work with Beth and Conrad on that, and, we're meeting, I don't know when our meeting is in June, but it's probably mid to late June,
I think it's the second Thursday.
second Thursday, so we have time on that. Thank you, that's a good suggestion. Yes, any other member of the public? State your name and the town you live in, please.
Good evening, Tommy Regan from Town of Southeast. Actually, kind of correlating what Nancy was just speaking to right there, and if it's in there, I apologize, but what I didn't hear is what experience has taught me is that in any given situation like this, the parameters have to be set, because the other side of the service to the public and, having a meeting that moves along is not having somebody here filibustering. And what I didn't hear tonight are provisions for, say, decorum, or, when a person stands here and says the phrase the third time, as I've said before, right? That catches my, experience has taught me that parameters have to be set in, sort of in line, not just the time parameters, but also probably some other parameters, because this is gonna come up when the room is packed. This is easy when it's the three of us. When it's gonna get challenging is when there's 35 people here. And to give whichever chairman it is the tools to work with to maintain decorum and to give everybody a chance to speak, but also yet a chance for the meeting to move along, so that the chairman is not handcuffed. So if it's not there already, may I suggest putting in some tools for the legislature to allow public comment, but also to have the tools to rein it in when necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, that's a good point. Any other member? Yeah,
Through
Council.
the chair. So Chairman, that is an interesting point. It is covered by Robert's
I was
rules.
gonna say.
Yeah, our default is
So
Robert's rules, yeah.
the question I think the legislature would need to determine is that something that should be really focused on within this particular resolution.
That
And
wasn't my
they may.
intention with that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Conrad, because our manual is essentially an exception to Robert's rules.
Yeah.
Our default is Robert's rules, and anything that we put in our manual supersedes and goes against whatever might otherwise be contradictory in Robert's rules. So if that's already in there, quite frankly, it might be just up to the chairs to get themselves, myself included, that are acquainted with Robert's rules, because there are a lot of good tools in there. And our rules do make specific reference to Robert's rules as our, anything that's not covered in here defaults to that. So Tommy, to your point, it's maybe just on us to get more familiar with that, myself included. So that's a good point. Eric?
Point of personal privilege, when you're too loud, can be used, when the room's too loud, correct? Something that we can use. You have gavel up there, but I think getting to, that thing.
Well, no, you don't look at the gavel, you look at how many scars are on this.
Not many.
We've had some,
Amy's been gentle on
there's
it.
been some raucous caucuses here, from what I can tell. So,
But also, I think, and I would be very cautious, I would be very cautious with the Constitution and what we're jumping in on when people are speaking. I think it's controlling decorum is one thing,
Yeah.
but infringing on what people are saying, as long as they're not using, robust language, I'll use that term loosely, you know, and cursing at people, but again, the decorum is up to the chair
Sure.
to keep, and Robert's rules is there. So, and at any point in time, any one of us, if we feel uncomfortable, can use Robert's rules and be called upon, and like I said, my personal privilege is, the room is too loud, you know, decorum, certain things like that can be used at any time.
Right, good point. Any other comments from a legislator or public on this? Okay, TBD, we're gonna keep working on this. Hopefully, again, I'd like to see this passed out of the June Rules Committee meeting for
That'd be
consideration
wonderful.
at the July full meeting.
Before budget.
Before budget, that's when things get nice and quiet and calm.
Yeah.
So good on that. We only have one remaining item, or two other items. Litigation report, that's an FYI. Our colleagues, legislators have copies of that. It is a confidential document. If there's any discussion or questions on this, we may need to go into executive session. I don't have any. Does any committee member have a comment? Any legislator? The public, I'd let you speak on it, but it's confidential. But I'm still putting it out there.
Dad joke.
That's, no, I didn't start with the dad joke today, that's next one. Any other business for this committee? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Good
Thanks,
night,
folks.
everyone.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you.
Good meeting you.
Just,